cousin was asking me the other day, which book did I think was the best? Which book did I think I did the best on? I had to think long and hard. I was like, I had The Great Influencer. I'm just trying to think of plot, because this book has sold more than any other book, but it, like I always say, it capitalized on the vampire or the zombie craze. I think it has some great details and some great moments. But overall, story-wise, I'm like, I don't know. It's just like, you try to think about it, and it's like, this book's great advantage is the subject. Like, I think it tells, I set out to do what I wanted to do, which is take a zombie story and just put people in normal life, just living in New York, and just have the zombie apocalypse slowly happen, and just have it get more and more out of control as the people are just doing their best to survive. And it succeeds there, and it's great. But there's a concept in writing. Sorry, I'm fighting a cold. That's why I said concept instead of concept. There's a concept in writing that half the authors, or there's two ways to write, pantsers and plotters. And inside lingo for you. So pantsers, the whole point is they fly at the seat of their pants when they're writing. So as compared to plotters who write a plot. So the most famous pantser is that everyone always refers to over the years is just Stephen King. They always say that guy will start a book and have no idea where it ends. He just starts writing. He just goes on an adventure with his characters. And that creates great ambiance, but when it doesn't work, it just, like, in comparison, you go J.R.R. Martin. There's no way you write Game of Thrones without plotting. And that's how you get these big, just intricate storylines that all go somewhere and all have huge meaning. Like, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the show or read the book, I don't know about the book, but the show actually, like Hodor, there's this character that he's mentally incapable of saying anything but Hodor, and so they think his name is Hodor, and he just says his name over and over, like, and it's revealed later that this person goes back and looks back through time, and while he's in this person's mind, he's actually in Hodor's mind looking back through time, I believe. And while this is happening, they come under attack, and they're trying to run from the zombie people in the north. And Hodor is running behind him, and the guy's in his mind, and the guy kind of takes over Hodor because Hodor's super strong. And he's like, Hodor, you need to like hold off all these zombies, and he's speaking in Hodor's memories that he's trying to view, because like the whole time he doesn't understand what's going on, because Hodor is just 100% capable, normal when he's a child. So he's like going through his memory trying to figure out what happened to him to make it so he can only say Hodor, what was going on. And so anyways, while he's in there, they get chased by zombies, and so he takes over inside of Hodor's mind through him as a child, starts controlling him, and he's like, warns him, he's like, you need to hold the door, you need to hold the door. And so Hodor is holding the door while they all run, and they're escaping, and Hodor just using super strength to hold the door, and he's just going, hold the door, hold the door, hold the door, hold the door. But he's like having a seizure because the person's in his mind kind of controlling him. And so Hodor is slowly like breaking down. He's like, hold the door, hold the door, Hodor, 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 Hodor. And he's like getting stabbed by these people, and it was like his whole destiny was what happened to him. And it shows him, it goes back to the past, like his mom runs out, because that's what happens. He in the past, in the memory, what Bran is looking at, the character that's in his past, he's still seeing him in the past. In the Hodor in the past, who's a child, like 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, he starts having a seizure because he starts screaming, hold the door, hold the door, hold the door. And it cuts back to him as an adult holding the door and getting stabbed and like, hold the door, hold the door. And it just keeps cutting back and forth between him and a child, him and his adult. And the child like starts having a seizure, and he's like, hold the door, hold the door, Hodor, Hodor, Hodor. So that moment in the future in Game of Thrones is just filled with this kind of stuff. He wasn't ever saying his name. His name was never Hodor. He was saying, hold the door. The whole time he's been in the whole story, he's been telling you what he's going to be doing, like his final sacrifice for everyone to save their lives. He's going to be holding the door. And all he spoke his whole life since he was 13 years old was what he's going to do. So he just goes around going, Hodor, Hodor. It's the only thing he can say. And then there's that reveal, and you're just like, what? Like when that happens, you're like, are you kidding me? And on the flip side, you have Stephen King, who I read the book Under the Dome, and the thing about Stephen King's books is they're amazing concepts, and they're fun worlds, and they're like cool to be put in these situations. And it's definitely about the ride and not the destination, because in the book Under the Dome, on the contrary side, so that's a plotter, like that was plotted. You don't just come up with that in the beginning. You have to know it and have the end figured out. And you have Stephen King's in Under the Dome, where he's at the end of the book, they're like, oh, the dome, they just figure out, they're like, the dome is, so the concept of the book is a dome comes down on a town, and they're all trapped inside this town in a dome, and they're trying to figure it out, and they're running out of resources, and there's just like different things you would have to overcome if your town was cut off from the entire world. And so in the end, I think smog starts to fill it, so all the smog's building up, so they're starting to choke, and they realize, somehow the main character finds out that the dome is just an alien toy, and there's some alien somewhere in a galaxy far away that is in like a daycare center playing with toys, and the dome is one, and the character has to plead to him like, hey, we're not a toy, we're real people under this dome, and you need to pick up the dome. And it just kind of comes out of nowhere, and then the alien's like, kid's like, okay, I guess, and it's like the aliens don't really care, it's like a toy, so he just barely talks a toddler into being like, okay, I'll lift it up, and that's what takes away the dome. And it's like, comes out of nowhere, and all of a sudden it's like, yeah, it's an alien child, and it's just like, I don't know, I read that and I was like, yeah, That's the difference between Pancers and plotters. Stephen King had no idea what this dome was and just made it up on the fly. He's like, I don't know. But the adventure was fun. The ending, I don't know. If you can't tell, I'm more of a plotter. But this book was more of a pantser endeavor. All that's to say, pantser. This one, this is my most like officially written book, where I sat down and I wrote this book like writing was my career. This book was done in 90 days because this book just came out, and this book for 1 month made over $300 a week in 2013 or 2014. And so I was like so stoked. I was like, oh my gosh, you could live off $300, $400 a month almost, especially if you get 2 books doing that. I didn't know that after a month it was just gonna fall off and be like $20 a month. But anyway, so I went to the library every day and I wrote this book like it was my job. Like I took a sack lunch. I was like, just 90 straight days. I think I had that summer off, and so I was just working. And this book I think was written with cue cards. And so was this book. This book is kind of a continuation of that one, where it's very similar to the zombie book, except it's vampires, and it just shows like a slow and steady breakdown of society, just as controlled by vampires. And that was just, the whole point of it. It was just like, kind of like, going into that world, what would it be like if people just tried their best and worked together to survive against an honest, like, vampires decided human technology has come far enough. If we let them go any further, our world is going to be over. So let's come out of the shadows and just try and take everything over. And so it's that struggle of just, it's kind of like zombies where they keep spreading. The more people they kill, the more become them. And so it's like, as the book goes on, you're more and more and more outnumbered. And it's just like starts on the East Coast. And so everyone's like fleeing west, and it's just getting worse as you go. And so it's kind of like the same concept. But this book I was big on note cards when I wrote that. And I don't have The Great Influencer up here. I have a bunch of other books, but The Great Influencer, I just wanted to say, was that book I wrote with note cards. But that was my most plotted out book. And it really followed The Great Gatsby, but 100 years later in our modern society, right in like, it captures like 2019. Like, it missed COVID. Like, it's our society in 2019 before COVID, basically, is the moment it captured, because that's when it was written. And it just captures like the emergence of TikTok, the death of Vine, and people becoming YouTubers and really growing. But anyway, the point with that book is, when I plotted that book, I plotted every chapter as if it was its own story. Like, I was like, every chapter I made sure to make it a 3-act structure. So every chapter has a beginning, a middle, and an end, specifically, that are kind of follow just a very broad, very basic, very minor version of the hero's journey. So it's like the character in every chapter of The Great Influencer, he starts off with a status quo, and then about 10% into the chapter, something happens that sends him through this journey on the chapter, and then he gets through whatever he's going through, and then the last piece of the chapter is like a new status quo that the character is living at. And then that just repeats throughout the whole story. I don't think anyone would ever notice, but I kind of vowed not to do that again, but I might try that again, because I think people liked it. So that had me thinking, because I was like, my cousin asked me what I thought was my best. That's everything I was thinking about. And then I was thinking about this, and I was like, I don't know if I wrote the best in this, because those, like this book was written in 90 days. This one was written in 2 years. I wrote this with my coffee every morning, but it was very plotted. This book was the most strategically plotted out of any book I've ever written. And it's specifically, like, to the T plotted after something they call Save the Cat. And it's the hero's journey. And there's this book I was reading called Save the Cat Writes a Novel. And because Save the Cat's kind of it's a screenplay, like a movie rule on how to write a story. And so this was like, it follows simple rules, like if your character is winning throughout this half of the story, then something happens here, like a false victory or a false defeat, and then they lose through this half. Or if they're losing through this half, false victory, false defeat. Like if they're winning here, they have a false victory. If they're losing here, they have a false defeat, and then they win or lose here depending on the opposite. But there's just little rules, like the setup, the payoff. Like the character goes through this journey. Spoiler alert. And he basically right here at the exact 50% mark, there's a moment where like this cover happens where the Roman soldier's like, you like go pick up the cross and carry it because Jesus can't carry it. And so the character's like brought a gun with him, and he's like, get away from me. And then he just freaks out, and like the guards like start to attack him, like, no, you're gonna do this. So he pulls out his gun and shoots him, and in the chaos the disciples take Jesus away, and the main character is he went back to kind of disprove Christianity up until this point, and so that's his false victory. Like in that moment he's like, okay, well at least I stopped this, so this dogma that really brings down our society, you know, and holds back the future has been stopped. So at least I did that. Like, I don't know if I killed someone's great-great-grandfather or whatever. So then he escapes goes back to his time, and then, you know, thinking he's happy, and then slowly it's like things are off. Like he catches his fiance, she cheats on him, and she's like, it's no big deal. Like, why are you making this a big deal? It's just cheating. And then when he's in the chaos, like that's how it starts. Like there's a chapter where everything's normal when he comes back, and then that happens, and he's like still reeling from like, I just got cheated on. And then all of a sudden, like an NFL, it's not the NFL, but like an NFL style show comes on, like with the horns and trumpets, and it's like, welcome to the CFL, and or whatever it was, and it's the combat league, and it's like these announcers, and they're treating it just like it's like a modern day basketball or NFL game or hockey game, but instead it's like a gladiator arena, and these people are just killing themselves, like swords and shields and like guts and arms flying. And that's when like slowly the world just like, he's like realizing that there's a moral fiber missing, and the world's just tumbling into chaos. And like now he's stuck in this world, and he's like, you know, it's him dealing with that and being like, oh my gosh, what have I done? but it just strictly follows this plot of just literally every rule of plotting, like as far as the Save the Cat plotting structure, hero's journey. This book adheres to that just verbatim. No ifs, ands, or buts. So I don't know what I'm gonna do with the next one. I'm at this crossroad now where I'm like, what do I do now? I wrote this book. Where do I start? Where do I go from here? I've been working on this for 2.5 years. The rough draft was 2 years. So it was another, like, I think last April I finished it. And this just came out last Friday. So, almost 6 months exactly. So 2 years and 6 months. Alright. I'll figure out where to go next.